Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crazy Canuck Truckin' Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts. I am the Size Matters, and I am here with
Crazy Canuck Dave. How you doing, Size Matters? Looks like you are in your pickup today.
I am. I'm rather mobile. Today I am in Bismarck, North Dakota, just hoping that I don't get any phone calls that interrupt my signal. So we're going to try really hard to keep this going smoothly. And for a 10 code today, I'm using a 1032 for radio check because I got some new headphones and a new mic that I'm trying out, and also hoping for that to not fail. There's a lot of potential fragility over here if my Wi-Fi dies, my mic. So bear with me, guys. So far, so good.
The good thing is, as truckers and as agronomic people, we just roll with the punches all the time.
Every time.
Whatever gets thrown at us, we'll get it figured out.
I bet that applies to our guest today because I have a feeling she has to roll with the punches. And from time to time, she gets a little concerned about that radio check. Is anybody out there listening? So would you like to introduce our guest, please?
I will do that. We are going to have on here a young lady today that I don't believe I've ever met in person, even though we're like 20 minutes apart, and I've known about her for a while, and I've followed her on LinkedIn and different places. And what I do know is that she works for Cersei Transport or Trucking? Cersei Trucking. I don't know what, I just had a brain freeze there. And they are one of the premier flatbed companies and have been for many years out of Winnipeg. Awesome company. And so our guest today is Rachelle Baker. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
So how long have you been in trucking?
So I started out, it'll be 10 years actually in a few weeks with Bison Transport actually. And Bison acquired Cersei back in 2013. So Jerry Cersei sold after, almost 45 years, as the owner and proprietor of Cersei Trucking. And I was in recruiting and driver services over at Bison. And our current president, Norm Blagden, actually reached out to me there because he had made the move to Cersei and reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in doing some recruiting for Cersei. So ultimately, it started out kind of like doing like a hybrid position at Bison and Cersei, but the plans were to grow Cersei and to grow the company. So they kind of realized they needed somebody full time, which actually worked out perfectly for me because I was living in Winnipeg, like 3 minutes from the terminal on Chevrier Boulevard. So it was an easy option for me to forego my trip all the way out to the airport at Bison's main terminal there in Winnipeg. And so I started with Cersei in 2014. And so I just celebrated my 7 years with Cersei, and a couple of years before that at Bison.
Wow. So you're in the driver services. Explain to people that don't know, what is driver services?
Driver services is everything. I feel like it's everything anyways. We pretty much.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. As a driver, I love that.
some days it is. And, we basically, from the start of, the pre-hire, recruiting, onboarding, orientation, risk and compliance actually falls under my department as well. All the training, all of that. So, I work very closely with our operations managers. So we have Matt Peterson on our mileage division, and then Reid Lechner in our specialized division down in Altona, Manitoba. So we kind of, we're kind of like the three amigos. We have to work really closely together and make sure everything works with ops, because if it doesn't, then that's where the headaches come in. So basically recruiting, onboarding, training, and risk and compliance. That's all under driver services.
So I realized proximity helped, right? I need a job. I'm close to the depot. I could work here. But any other reasons why to get into trucking? Was there something in your background that you felt there was a reason to?
You know what? A family friend, actually, my mom's best friend's daughter has been at Bison in operations for a long time. And I was actually on maternity leave in 2013. And I was up north. My mother-in-law, my husband's from Thompson, Manitoba. So I was up north, with my kids, and I got a call from her and said, like, I know that you're not back to work for a few months, but there's this opportunity I think you'd be amazing for at Bison, as like an onboarding, like pre-hire assistant in driver services. And I had really never thought of it before. I obviously, like, I've worked in, restaurant industry and for the Chiropractor Association of Manitoba. So I was kind of, like in that mommy mindset and wasn't really actually thinking of what I wanted to do after mat leave. And so I wrangled, trying to find childcare and went for the interview. And, I walked in the building at on Sherwin Road there by the airport, and I actually saw a close girlfriend from high school that I hadn't seen probably in 10 years. So as soon as I saw her, and, she and I had a conversation right after my interview, she said, like, I've been here for a couple of years. I really love it. You'll love it here, sort of thing. And thankfully I got the job. And from there, the opportunities just kind of kept coming for me. And, I love working as a team, and I love working with drivers and, meeting so many different types of drivers from, all over the world even. And so when the opportunity came with Searcy, like, I didn't know much about decks, didn't know anything about, like oversized freight or anything like that. And it was obviously a huge learning curve, but I had a lot of really good mentors. And obviously Searcy is just celebrated 52 years. So a lot of the office staff and operations support staff that were there when I came over in 2014 were just, like a wealth of knowledge for me. And, they were all so welcoming. And I was only one of 3 females, I think, at the time that was employed at Searcy. So that was a little bit, intimidating to start. But yeah, kind of when I joined and started learning, and, your brain just kind of overloads with, you thought, trucking. Well, then, here's some, decks and open deck freight to throw at you. So yeah, I never knew that it was something I wanted to do, but now I can't see myself not working in transportation.
That's interesting, because, I've, as a driver and as, the stuff I've done in the industry, sometimes you get people from vans over into dry vans, regular box trailers, over into deck work, and they're like, well, why can't you do that? It's like, well, there's a little more involved.
Exactly.
But it's interesting and it's fun. Yeah. So your husband is from Thompson. So is that where you grew up, or where did you come from originally?
No, I'm a Winnipeg girl from straight out of Charleswood, and lived there all my life. And then I moved, it'll be 6 years for us in October that we moved just south of the city. And honestly, I wouldn't look back. Like, I mean, I have a short commute, down the 75. I, wave at our trucks as I see them when I'm, on the highway passing them. I guess I shouldn't say that, but yeah, when I'm on the highway, and it's, a nice quick drive for me. So where I live, it's not a small town so much anymore, but yeah, I don't know if I could ever move back to the big city of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So coming into trucking unexpectedly, what did you think you were going to do when you were a little kid? What was the job that you always said, I'm going to have that?
Honestly, I think my sister was a teacher. My mother was a teacher's assistant for years in Winnipeg. And I don't know, I felt like I could teach. And, when I think when I was little, I wanted to be a hairdresser, but that's just because, that's all I kind of knew. But yeah, I think as I kind of grew up, like, I didn't go to secondary school. It wasn't for me. I was not great in school. I mean, I got by or whatnot, but yeah, I kind of didn't really find what I wanted to do really. And I'm kind of lucky that I stumbled into trucking, because I mean, it's not easy by any means, but I mean, like, there's so many resources out there and so many like different chances for you to learn, like with all the podcasts and webinars and, conferences and stuff like that. Like, you never stop learning. Like, I love it. Yeah.
Well, I thought people always say with trucking, you just sit there and hold a wheel. How complicated could it be?
Yeah, well, I think the naysayers out there as to why they say that, but yeah, it's just, there's so much. And I mean, even as a driver, like, I feel like drivers are never done learning too, like I get calls and, and I'm looped into conversations about things that, even our most experienced guys that have been there for, 25 years may have not have known. So yeah, it's definitely an industry where there's lots to learn and you never stop. And they're always changing stuff too, right? And rules and compliance and stuff like that. So it's constantly changing. So I mean, yeah, you're definitely never bored.
With the changingest industry there is.
For
and
sure.
there is
So
always things to learn.
Well, and okay, so along those lines, what's your favorite resource? What's something that you constantly go back to and use that's been the most helpful in your position, or that's really the most helpful for your drivers?
Honestly, for me, it's my mentors, like my direct superior, Howie Hildebrand. He's our general manager. He and I share an office right now, and honestly, I've reached out to him a lot for things, and I mean, he's just right there, and it's convenient. Norm Blagden, our president, like he's, was a drive. Both of them actually had their class ones, and, we're drivers and we're behind the seat, which actually, you don't see a lot, sometimes with presidents and CEOs and stuff like that. And it's really nice because, yeah, they know the ins and outs almost like of everything that I do in my role and pretty much like the entire company. So, I mean, my resource and my go-to is obviously to them. But Manitoba Trucking Association, like, I've been involved with them and attended lots of conferences and meetings and all of that. So, I mean, they're always a really good resource as well. And of course, the internet, the friendly internet.
We had
Mr. Terry Shaw.
Mr. Terry Shaw.
Yeah.
How could I forget that? How could I forget?
Make sure that's in all shouty capitals, Mr.
He's going to give me a
Terry
hard
Shaw.
time now too.
Oh, I know.
He started off auditing logbooks, and look where he is. And
right,
he's a lot of fun.
And that's the thing, right? It's an industry where, like you don't have to be the president, but I mean, like there's ways that you can, move up. And when you dedicate yourself and you can show how hard you work and, like you're dedicated to this industry. Like I've, started off as an assistant, and now, I was the first female manager at Searcy a few years ago. And now there's, I think, 3 of us. So, I mean, it just goes to show you that, yeah, like you can start as an assistant or customer service or anything like that. And you can kind of work your way up and prove yourself that, you're committed.
What's been the biggest surprise to you in trucking? Like before you started till now, what was the biggest thing that was just like, wow, I have had no idea?
Honestly, I think kind of what we were talking about before, like you guys aren't just, steering wheel holders. Like there's so much to the job and there's so much that drivers have to deal with. And, I know that people don't often like understand that, but yeah, like from the moment you get up and, start your pre-trip till, your ELDs and your, load checks and deliveries and customs, and like there's so much in a day where, yeah, you're driving for 11 or, 13 hours or whatever, but there's just so much in between where it's like, you really have to be skilled and, continue with your education and continue with, continuous improvement. And that kind of really did shock me, I think, ultimately in the beginning. There's just so much to keeping a driver on the road and busy and compliant and safe that, yeah, it's just, you don't actually think about it. Like you and I drive to work, in our passenger vehicles. And sometimes, it's kind of mundane and you just drive to work and you get from point A to point B and maybe you stop for gas. But, with a driver, there's just so much more to that. And making sure that, yeah, you are safe and compliant is, there's lots to it and lots of moving parts and lots of people involved.
Okay. So of all those things you were just talking about, which ones do you think to yourself, okay, this is the piece of information. This is the one thing that I love going over with a driver that I want to make sure they're clear on. What's that favorite training bit that you do with them?
Honestly, I think, from the onboarding, starting a new company is intimidating, I think, even though, a lot of orientations and trucking consists of the same things. Learning new faces and the phone numbers and the who do I call for this sort of thing is kind of, what I'm, I don't say most passionate about, but I mean, I want to make sure that driver knows that like he's not alone. We have 24/7 like support and after hour support. And, when you're throwing all this information in a few days of orientation, it's like, they maybe retain, 5-10%. And that's natural, right? No one's going to remember every single thing or every policy they're signing. And just to make sure they have that information, like on hand and who to talk to. And that's kind of like where I fit in. Like, I'm very much like as soon as you're on the highway, even if you forget everything that we've talked about, like, just call and never be afraid to call, because if I don't have the answer, like, somebody else will, and I will direct them to that. Right. As in regards to like the aspect about the driver's day, I was very heavily involved in the ELD implementation and the AOBRD implementation in 2017. I trained all of our drivers when we brought electronic logs in 2017 over to CRC. So I understood how the back and forth with, the training from going to paper logs for, years and years to this, some sort of electronic recording device in the driver's truck. So I saw a lot of the, the driver side of things and the compliance side of things. And I wanted to understand, sometimes, drivers are not accepted, and, the rules themselves, and another new technology for them to learn. And, to throw a smartphone into there, and it's like, pretty overwhelming. So I'm kind of passionate about, like, making sure that drivers understand how to use our logs and, how to actually, be compliant at the end of the day, because it's important.
I have one question about that I like to ask recruiters.
Yeah.
So, because there is so much information overload at an orientation,
Mm-hmm.
and people say, like, okay, call this number if you have any questions. Always call and ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
How hard is it to get a hold of you, or to get a hold of that person on the phone?
Honestly, I don't think, we all now, especially with COVID, like, we all kind of have soft phones installed on our phone. So, my regular cell phone actually has my work line to it, and it goes right to there. So, and, we do have on-call cell phone numbers, and there's on-call dispatch, there's on-call, like, our fleet maintenance manager, he, is on call pretty much all the time. If it's on him, it's, somebody else on his team. I don't think, communication, I think, is kind of everybody's like sore spot. And I can't speak for other companies, but the communication, I think, is continuously, needs to be worked on, improved on. I think right now we're good with the fact that we do have these numbers, and we're kind of working on right now, like, a dedicated driver line, so that, it's not missed, or, they don't have to walk through, hi, welcome to CRC Trucking, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, press 184 for this, like, it's gonna, connect you to, your fleet manager, the shop, me, their operations team. Like, we're working on that now to make sure that they have a dedicated line, because there's nothing more frustrating when you can't get a hold of somebody, or, you send a satellite message and no one gets back to you. So communication is definitely important to us, and we're working on, like, always constantly finding ways to improve that. So drivers aren't left, on the side of the highway and not knowing who the heck to call, or can't get through to somebody.
That's been one of my biggest pet peeves, starting at a place, and everybody's very accessible until you get hired and you're out the door after your last day of orientation. Then it's like nobody works there anymore.
Yeah.
I have some bad memories.
Oh yeah. And I'm not saying we're perfect. Like, we definitely, have our issues as well. But like, that's one thing, like, I don't want a driver to start and then be left alone, and then something happens, or they get, like, disgruntled or whatnot because they couldn't get a hold of somebody. So that's one thing that, like, our entire team in both of our divisions, like, all right, like, everybody's all hands on deck. If you don't know the answer, don't transfer, like, hey, I'm going to call you back with the answer, or get someone to call you, sort of thing, when I get that answer. Google's a wonderful thing.
Yep.
So in my regular day, I spend a lot of time working with interns, trainees, and doing training and that type of stuff myself. So do you feel like a lot of the things that you are teaching, that you are sharing as when you're training, is a little bit like being a life coach, and those are some pretty transferable skills to their personal lives?
You know what? Yeah. Now that I think about it, yes. And, I'm friends with, a lot of our drivers, and, I've invited them over to my home, and, you develop relationships with people that you spend so much time with, even like, coworkers and stuff like that. And, things come up in orientation where it's like, wow, like I don't know if I should be giving advice on this. However, like let's talk about this for, 25, 30 minutes sort of thing. And I learn a lot from them too, right? Like, I'm not very familiar with I should say like cattle hauling and livestock hauling, but a driver last week, he was heavily involved in that for many years. During orientation, we had a great conversation about some of the requirements there, and then it led to us talking about family and stuff like that, and that's kind of what the best part of my job is like, not, yes, it's great to onboard them and stuff like that, but connecting with them and knowing when their birthday is, and knowing what they have at home and families and stuff like that. Like, yeah, you definitely kind of develop like a like a mentorship, and call me if you need anything. Or we have some like a drivers only Facebook group as well, so that only if you're employed by CRC that you can go ask questions and stuff like that. And we've had some wives jump on and and ask questions and stuff like that too. So it's like, it's definitely yes, training, mentorship, and it doesn't just stop at orientation, that's for sure.
Okay, so that brings up two questions. You have said that you have drivers coming in from around the world, right? So if you think about that, what's coming back at you from some of those drivers coming from very different backgrounds and cultures?
Oh, lots. I went on a campaign with the province of Manitoba in 2017 to London, and we spent time recruiting a couple of drivers that were there and wanted to immigrate to Canada. And it actually, I've never been overseas before, and this is probably one of my most memorable experiences, because I had never even thought about how amazing, you think about how amazing Canada is, but then you go overseas and you listen to these stories from drivers that want to immigrate to Canada, and the whys and hearing the stories about, I saw an RCMP officer in a movie when I was 5 years old, and ever since then, I wanted to immigrate to Canada, and like, it actually really touches you. Like, I think it was more of an emotional journey, I think, too, not just hiring drivers and, bringing their families overseas, but they're literally uprooting their entire lives, applying for citizenship in Canada. Like, something that you don't actually think of until you're there and listening to these stories, and, trying to understand, what it involves and how much work it is, and we had a driver that brought over his wife, and they're actually a team on our specialized division. They're, hauling our hard to move and oversized loads and stuff like that. And another gentleman and his wife and family and 3 kids. Like, it's a lot. And they moved everything. I picked them up at their airport with their luggage, and we found a spot for them here. We connected them with, their like cultural groups in Winnipeg here, and connected them with some, Facebook groups that they could reach out to, and find some of their like favorite snacks, and talk about home and stuff like that. So it was a really eye-opening experience just to understand like what it meant to immigrate to Canada.
So here's my second question. First of all, you're pretty much like a lifestyle coordinator now at this point. But my second question is, then you have children and you have invited folks into your home. How's that impact on your family? And by the way, I just want you to know, Victoria's in the background and she's wondering some of these things, so I get to be her mouthpiece today.
Honestly, even when I first started at Bison, even like there's opportunities to involve your family in things, and there's award ceremonies, and when I came over to CRC, there's we have during National Trucking Week, we do like the Driver Appreciation Day and stuff like that, and my kids were included. My husband is included. I think my sister even came to one time. Like, it's important. And, I know a lot of companies say, we're family culture and family orientated, but, actions speak louder than words. So when my kids are invited and there's like a petting zoo, and, they meet my family and my boss, and it's just and that, again, like, drivers are, bringing their wives to barbecues, and their, kids to, take a tour of the yard. Like, it's important to, connect with people. And I know there's some people out there that are fine just, coming into the terminal and leaving, and maybe never, connecting with somebody like that. But, there are a lot of drivers that do. And there are a lot of drivers where, we're on first name basis with their wives, their wives call for a lot of the things, or their partners. And it just, I don't know, it makes it a lot easier, and I know that you're sometimes supposed to leave work at home, or leave work at work, and, home life separate.
really
truck,
serious.
yeah.
You're so cute. No, it's not how this works.
Yeah, not in trucking. And that's the thing. I think it's a good opportunity. And, there's boundaries obviously that you have to watch and whatnot. But I mean, yeah, like it's just easy. It makes things easier when, your family is comfortable, meeting drivers, and even on the road, or, getting gas at, the Flying J on the 75. I've run into our drivers, and, what I mean? It just makes things easier, I think.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Trucking often is more of a lifestyle rather than an occupation. Yeah. And so keeping the family involved, for those that want it to be involved, then that's so important to make them not just say you're a family, but act like you're a family. And sometimes families have squabbles, but then you work through them, right? And you figure it out. And you need boundaries in families too, like I would like if my kids always wanted to do everything with us, but that's not how they always are. So then let them have the freedom to do other things, and
yeah. And honestly, it's one of those things where, I've definitely had disagreements and, sometimes even arguments with drivers. And like I said, like everything that, our drivers deal with in a day, and we're the ones sometimes that are the first people they talk to. I've never not been, called back after a disagreement or an argument, and, been apologized to. Like, we have to work with each other and continue to have that relationship. And, our drivers are respectful enough to notice, like, oh, wow, like that probably wasn't the way that conversation should have went. But, at those conversations, and I see the name on my call display, and, hi, like, you're always, you want to see it, the next conversation is going to go. And, it's a lot of the times like, oh, I'm really sorry, you didn't deserve that. Like, having a rough day, or, you know what I mean? And you have to understand that. And I think for the most part, yeah, like we understand that. And sometimes you just need somebody to sound things out or to vent. And it happens to all of us.
So that brings up a really good point, because I've dealt with mental health issues and some anxieties and stuff like that. And your job is often the point person for the driver. Either you or the dispatch fleet manager, whoever they talk to. And it is so critical. What has helped you deal with drivers like me or other drivers that have called up and have had those heated conversations, or we call up sometimes and there could have been 100 things happen in the day, and the last thing that happens, you're calling up the company and you're just fuming, and it seems like it's such a small thing, but it's the culmination of all kinds of things. What has helped you deal with that? And because it seems very obvious that you do that well. And I'm not saying that because of what we're seeing in the interview here, because I see your drivers out on the road. Mm-hmm. I know what they say, and I know how they feel about the company, which is for the most part very good. Mm-hmm. So you're doing something that's working. What has helped you?
Honestly, we were provided training. The Manitoba Trucking Association does have, training on it, and that is really important. But I think the conversations are almost more important. I'll tell you a quick story that is quite upsetting to me, because it was during the time where we started training and implementing the ELDs, and one of our drivers, been with CRC for almost 20 years, 2.2 million safe miles in that time. He was going through some mental health issues, and we had paired up with the Project 11 and the True North Youth Foundation with the Manitoba Moose and Winnipeg Jets Club. And because of this, a driver was dealing with some mental health issues, and I trained him, and, he was getting it. But again, he'd been used to paper logs for so long that it was a struggle for him. And I didn't know, but he had, been dealing with a lot of medical issues as well, a lot of back pain and stuff like that. And we had barbecue day. We have barbecue every Thursdays in our yard. Well, pre-COVID anyways. And I'm, on my social media during my lunch break, and I see the RCMP Manitoba post, and there's a photo of our driver, and he was missing. And like instantly, like your stomach just sinks, that's our driver. And it was posted, I want to say within the hour. And so I had to our president's office and ask him if he had seen anything. And it was just before the long weekend, the Canada Day long weekend. And we heard from the RCMP, he had parked his truck at home. And then a day later, we found out that he had taken his own life. So we're dealing with that. Like, I was actually, not because like I manage our social media as well at CRC, and, trying to, are we doing enough? Like, where is he? And then you see that, and, you talk to his wife, and, who didn't really know that he had, issues with, mental health. And it got to that point where he took his own life. So it's a tough subject because, it affected everybody at the company. But at the same time, again, it did kind of educate us on, are we doing enough for our drivers, right? So I'd actually had a confrontation with one of his friends as well, to the point where I felt like I was being not blamed for his death, but, the ELD training was kind of something that set him off. And he walked into my office, and he was enraged. And he'd, kind of verbally abused me in that, moment of time, and, slammed the door. And I never experienced anything like that. And I mean, I'm a pretty strong-willed and strong woman, but I at that moment, I just was like, wow, was this my fault? Did I, push it over, sort of thing? And thankfully, I had a really good group. Like our president went out right away and, and talked to the driver, and he was friends with him, and I got it, and I understood, but from that moment, that's kind of where our safe driving mileage award came from. We call it the Holden Award after Jim Holden. So yeah, like I said, he was a safe driver, 2.2 million miles. He went through something, and, I don't think anybody really knew what he was going through. And so at that point in time, we decided to team up with, Project 11, and Project 11 is geared, towards the younger generation. So it's like kindergarten to grade 5. But that's where it starts, right? And, I have young kids of my own, and even just to get them involved in something like that, and just so that they know, like there's somebody to talk to. And, we're lucky that we have a great benefits program at CRC, and we have an employee assistance program where, if we kind of feel like we're, at that cusp of, I don't know if I'm the right person to deal with this with you, we always offer EAP. And like I said, we've spent hours on the phone talking with drivers about, divorce and, death, and it happens all the time. Right. And in that moment, it was just, it's what we did. And I feel like, there's always more that we can do, but yeah, we've done, 50-50 and stuff like that, and donated to the Project 11, and it's just, it was probably one of the most, memorable times at CRC for me, not because it was amazing and, super fun time, but it had affected me to the point where it's like, yeah, we need to do more and make sure our drivers know more. And thankfully our driver trainer, Terry Waldy, he's been with our specialized division for a few years. He just came off the highway to do some training. He's battled with mental health as well. And he, talks to our drivers in orientation about it, like it used to be kind of a stigma, like, you don't talk about it, you just deal with it. You're on the road for hours on end and you have no one else to talk to. Well, he's always a phone call away. We're always kind of a phone call away. And if we can't deal with it, then yeah, our employee assistance program has really helped too.
Rachelle, this is just a great point that in our last episode, we talked about, what we can do for people in high stress areas. And I work in agriculture, and currently with what we've seen across the Canadian prairies, as well as into the Dakotas, we're at an all-time high right now for stress amongst our farmers and ranchers. And I think that in the trucking industry, based on what's happened in the last 18 months, so are you. Right. And you just were a great example of what you can do for others in your position. Nobody told you that was part of your job description. You don't have to do it, but you choose to. And if there was something to think about, there's a book out there called Leaders Eat Last, and it's about
love that.
servant leadership.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe something for people in your position who might hear this might think about. And secondly, for all of us, regardless of our position and what we do, I think that reaching out to each other, remembering to ask that simple question of, are you okay? But also understanding the other person may or may not have the strength to answer honestly. But we have to ask, are you okay? Number one. And number two, then we have to be able to just simply listen to them. And if at all possible, just direct them anywhere that we can for the professionals. Most of us just aren't in that position. But Rachelle, you said it so well that a lot of companies have an EAP, which is an employee assistance program that can be of help to them. I think there's some hotlines and information available, whether it's in Manitoba, Alberta, on Saskatchewan, that can probably be very helpful to people who might be listening too. And even as far as here in North Dakota, you can dial 211 on your phone and immediately be connected with a stress hotline who can help you.
Wow.
So this is just an opportunity for us to share that, because I think that's just a real hot button and topic that's going on right now in both our industries.
Definitely. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's the toll-free line in Canada is 1-833-456-4566. And in Quebec, that's 866-277-3553. Or you can go to crisisservicescanada.ca. That will be on the show notes, of course.
Yes.
And yeah, when the driver's calling in like that, or the driver friend of the guy that has passed away comes in and is very angry, it can be very easy to be angry back. But when you understand, and I think you did this quite well, Rachelle, you understood that he was hurting, and he wasn't, it can seem sometimes like they're lashing out at you or at somebody else, but to understand that that person is hurting and to give them the space to vent. And after you can calm things down, but that's critical to handle it the way you did that. And we don't know what somebody else is going through. I said that in my, like, I've been the trucking representative for Canada, for Bell Let's Talk in Canada. And in one of the short videos that I did for them, I say you never know what somebody's going through, and that's somebody that may be having some dark thoughts, or it may be somebody that's dealing with the trauma of losing somebody. It's not clear cut, and when somebody's blowing up about something or being very upset, to find out to let them vent and to find out what that reason is, and then you can help deal with that afterwards.
Very much so. And Victoria just sent a message wondering, Rachelle, how did you get to the point of having that patience and understanding? Is that simply your nature, or did you find that there's something that's changed within you?
Honestly, I think that I'm a pretty patient person, and and that's the thing, right? I had already been in transportation for a few years, so I kind of, obviously not to that, extent ever dealt with that, but, I understood where he was coming from, and, like, emotions include anger, and, and I would kind of put myself in that driver's position too, if that happened to my friend. And, there was something that, critical that happened before that, it's so natural to place the blame on somebody. And I wasn't upset. And, I was in the office, and our risk and compliance manager at the time, escorted him out, in the most like positive way that he could have, and professionally. And, then our president went to go talk with him and whatnot. But yeah, like I almost just kind of shut down and just kind of let him talk, because I didn't want to say something to aggravate him even more. And, just use me as like a sounding board and vent. And, like I express my condolences and, I don't know how that driver is. He's no longer with CRC. And I know that he's friends with some of our drivers. And I know that one of our drivers actually on his behalf came and did apologize to me on his behalf after that. And I hadn't talked to him about it, and and it's in the past and whatnot. But yeah, it affected me because it was something that included me, right? If it was somebody else, I'm sure it would have affected them, and I probably would have forgotten about it. But I'll always remember that moment. And and again, I hope that he knows that like what we've done because of that, like and naming like an award that will hopefully always be at CRC after him. And we buy a leather jacket for our drivers. We even presented his wife, Virginia, with a leather jacket as well with his name on it, and went out to her house and gave it to her, and just had some coffee and stuff with her. And even his daughter reached out to me on social media and said, like, thank you guys for what you did. And my dad would probably have been really honored. And unfortunately he's no longer with us, but yeah, it was just easy to do, right? It just made sense to honor him and his legacy. And, we have a beautiful plaque with a leather jacket and a little write-up with his name in our foyer at our head terminal there. Just, visitors come in, see it. And it's something that's really special to us. And I think we have like 21 or 22 drivers that have accomplished the Holden Award, which is at least over 1 million miles. And yeah, it means a lot. And it's something that I was a part of, which also really is special to me too.
I think that's outstanding.
Yeah. So thanks. I know I got a little bit emotional there, but thanks for letting me share that story because it's important, I think.
Quite okay.
It's very important to me. And I thank you very, very much for bringing that up, because I've had times where, I've talked to somebody. I don't want to get too much into some of the things that I've too many different people, but I know of cases where somebody has said they wanted to talk to somebody else and they haven't, and then shortly afterwards that person has gone and passed away, and died in tragic circumstances. And I've also had it, where a kind word has stopped somebody from committing suicide, or from going through with suicide, I should say. And it's really important. I was getting pretty emotional listening. I've lost I know a lot of people that have passed away in tragic circumstances, and you wonder, what more could we have done? So thank you very much for sharing that. And, who knows how things are going to go these days, but I have a program that I have loved to come and do to trucking companies and try to help educate them with mental health and not necessarily spotting things, but understanding that when people are on the road and when they're talking about it and when they're making strides, then that is something to be celebrated. It takes a long time to go through these things. It takes a long time to fix something that's taken years of buildup. If you don't look after something for years and years and years, like a field with Size Matters, she deals with weed control. If nobody does weed control for a decade and then expects her to come in and say, yeah, we'll just hit it with this one product and everything will be awesome for now and eternity.
It's a miracle. It's just a miracle. That doesn't happen, actually.
It doesn't happen. You're going to deal with it for many years to come. And it's the same thing. The same thing with mental health. So I had I've been in this industry with a professional license for 33 years. And I had something happen the other day that I've never had happen before. I pull into Deacon's Corner to fuel up, and Deacon's Corner, it's a Petro Pass fuel stop, and I put my card in, put the nozzle in my tank, turn it on and starting to pump fuel. And then really quickly, I'm like pulling the nozzle out and I'm looking at it like, and I'm looking at the gauge and it's ding, 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 ding. And I'm like, what is going on? And I look over and there's a guy, he had taken my hose and it's hard to get my hose around into his truck, but he put it into his truck.
Oh no.
And I'm like, what? And I go and flip off. I was obviously on the master pump and I flip off my thing and the total amount was like 33 liters. And I come around to the guy, I'm like, what are you doing? Well, ours wasn't working. So we were trying this one because we thought maybe this one would work. I'm like, really? So I don't know how long these guys have been driving, but they didn't even know how to pump fuel into their truck.
Oh no.
And so they figured, well, they'll just take one that's working and that should be fine. And I'm like, no.
I don't want to laugh at your expense, but I mean, I've actually never heard of that one before. So
that's a good one.
Yeah.
33 years, I've never come across that. I've had people siphon fuel out of my tanks when I'm not looking. But actually, when you're right there at the pumps to take my pump and to put in his truck, I'm like, wow, you're, yeah. So I trained him. There was a team. It's actually two people. It was a team runner, and it wasn't Cersei, so we're all good. Or Bison. And had to teach him, how to start the pumps, because if one handle is clicked, that was their issue. Was they were trying to start it with one of the handles in the on position, and it doesn't work. And so then, but it should have been something they should know. But anyway,
good for you to join them, because a lot of people wouldn't probably do that. They would just get irate and then and say a few choice words and then move on, right? Like that's kind of what I think that network and support system is important, because it takes you probably a few minutes to show them, and they're probably pretty thankful that they didn't steal your fuel.
I was pretty annoyed at first until I realized that they just didn't have any clue what they're doing. And it's like, okay, we'll show you how to do this. What are you dying to ask, Bridget?
Well, we all have funny stories being out on the road, but I want to know what Rachelle has for something that, whether it's happened while in training or something she's noticed out on the road that she wants to say was her funny transportation experience.
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but we have a driver, and of course I will not name names. And of course, in driver services, we get a lot of the calls that, when people don't know who to call, they call driver services and, they press 3 or whatever our option is. And, we've gotten calls with, like sometimes it's whether, is complaints or, kudos or whatnot. And we get a call from a customer, and one of our drivers who, like, it was really hot, wearing his coveralls, wasn't wearing anything underneath his coveralls. Okay. So to each their own, that's fine. But he went to go in his truck and change, and unfortunately did not draw his blinds, and he gave a little bit of a show to the customers, and they had a good laugh, and like I understand, and it was an uncomfortable situation. I said, wow, like I want to say that this was not planned. And so as soon as I call that driver, and like, you have to have super awkward conversations sometimes. And as soon as I called him, he's like, I know exactly why you're calling me. I'm so sorry. I forgot to draw. I was so hot and I was overheating. I just wanted to cool down, and I forgot to draw my blinds. And unfortunately, some of the shippers or whatnot saw him. But we had a good laugh, because yes, I totally trust him and believe him that it was an accident, but those are just some of those calls where you get where, you don't know how to answer that, but we'll call you back when we kind of get to the bottom of this. So that was actually just kind of recent. I want to say that was recent too, because he wasn't allowed in some place to use the bathroom, obviously because of COVID or whatnot. And so he wanted to change, and he changed. All right. So
as someone who, got their attention. And as someone who is constantly going from place to place and needing to go again, whether it's hot, you need to change clothes as you're going from something work to personal. I've changed clothes in the backseat of my own pickup a lot, and I'd like to think I've been pretty careful, but I'm going to pay a lot more attention now.
Yeah, no, I know. I hear you. I think we've all kind of been there. I don't know if I've been there during the daylight at a customer, but yeah, it was one of those stories. Yeah, it'll definitely stick with me.
I've heard of people that flash the paper boys too, by accident,
Well, you know what? The one time I post something on a Sunday on Twitter, positive that nobody is going to read it because it's a Sunday on Twitter. Yeah. Everybody reads it. Everybody.
Oh.
Still, the jury is still out. I still don't think that poor guy had to see anything.
I wasn't even naming names.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Got it. So, well, if you want to name names, you guys can all contact us by going to crazycanucktruckin@gmail.com. crazycanucktruckin.com is our website. There's lots of connections to all of our social media, all the things that we do there. If you want to watch this on YouTube versus just listening on a podcast, you have those options. So, Rachelle, we really want to thank you for spending time with us today. This has been a lot of fun. Not only do I usually come in doing multiple things at once, sliding her in sideways right as we start, I rarely ever know who we're actually going to talk to before it starts. And look at how good this was. How much fun, right?
Thank you guys so much. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Usually I know the person fairly well too, or one of us does. And here is Rachelle. We got to know Rachelle a little bit, and I appreciate all the times that you have liked and shared my stuff or done whatever you've done on social media, LinkedIn, and comments that you've made, and I appreciate that. And thank you very much. The stories and the heart that you have for your drivers really comes through, and I can say that Searcy is a place a lot of oversized people want to go to because they are treated like family. And that's very important. So thank you very much to everybody. It's been one of those days for me, hasn't it?
It turned out well. In case you haven't noticed, folks, turned out very well.
Yes, thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.
Hopefully maybe we can meet in person one day, and we won't just be LinkedIn connections and whatnot. And we'll see you maybe in the near future.
Exactly.